Okay, I think we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Coffee with Gable webinar. This time we're talking about 2023 workplace trends and how you can help your employees thrive by bringing them together. Let's start, as always, with a little bit of housekeeping and some Zoom tips. So as always, we will send the SHRM codes and the recording to everyone after the webinar. And just a tip for the chat. So some of you may have chat default to hosts and panelists only. So if you want everyone to see your questions and your impressions, please change your chat settings to everyone. And while we are waiting for everyone to join, I would like to give our speakers a chance to break the ice altogether and tell us what is your favorite way to take a break from work. Vanessa, do you want to start here?
Sure, I would love to. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm honored to be on this panel with this group of women here today. And one of my favorite ways to take a break from work is to get outside, especially in a hybrid workforce. I feel like it's so amazing to be able to get outside, take a walk, have fresh air, see nature. And I'm also a mom of a 9-year-old girl and an 11-year-old boy. So spending time with them really fills my heart up and gets me back to work again as well in my focused environment. So it's nice to have nature and my kids while working in a hybrid environment.
Sarah, what about you?
Love it. Yeah, similarly, I mean, I love to take a walk. I have 2 dogs. I love to do a tech-free walk, leave my phone at home, especially if it's been a packed meeting day. It's a nice decompression. And I live in DC, so the weather is not always walking friendly. So I also am a big reader. I'll try to do like a chapter or something in between a couple of meetings too. Generally of something not business related, just to get my brain back to reset. So those are probably 2 of my favorite things. And, you know, a little bit of a snack. Let's get real. We all love a little bit of a pick-me-up during the day.
Lisa?
For me, it's running. I do early morning runs. We live in San Francisco, so I live next to the Golden Gate Bridge. So that's my favorite scenery run. It gets me just so excited and like relaxed, I would say. Clears everything. And then I love to, like, my favorite coffee shop is usually opening very early. So I finish my run with a cup of coffee and I'm ready for the day. So that's my favorite way to take a break.
Love it. Love it. I'll just say shortly, mine is playing fetch or tug of war with my dogs. That's like an instant mind clearer for me. Okay, I think everyone is settled in. So I think we can start with the official introductions. So today with us, we have Sarah Ghessie, the Senior Director of HR at Fundrise, Vanessa Humes, the Director of Operations at Checker.org, and Liza Mash Levin, the co-founder and CEO of Gable. I would like for each of you to give us a very short intro of yourself, the position or company that you're working in, and let us know what is your workplace strategy. Sarah, do you want to start here?
Yeah, of course. So again, hello, I'm Sarah Ghessie. I am based out of Washington, D.C., and I work for a company called Fundrise. Fundrise is headquartered out of Washington, D.C., but we have employees in about 47 states across the United States. So we are widely dispersed. We have about 300 employees in total. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Fundrise, we are America's largest direct-to-investor alternative asset manager in America. I know that's a mouthful, but please look us up later if you want to learn more. And in terms of our workplace strategy, you know, pre-pandemic, we were all in the office. Of course, we shifted remote as most companies did or that were able to during the pandemic. And about a few months in, realized we wanted to move forward as a remote first organization. So currently, that is how we operate. Most of our employees either work remotely from their homes or from a co-working space. We do have an office still in Washington, D.C. that folks will occasionally go into. We try to do in-office days, things like that, which I'm sure we'll touch on later in the webinar. But excited to be here.
Thank you. We're super happy to have you. Vanessa, do you want to go next?
Of course. So my name is Vanessa Humes. I'm the Director of Operations at Checker.org. I am based in Denver, Colorado. I have worked for Checker for 4 years, and I started as the workplace operations manager in Denver, and then became the global head of real estate and workplace, and then have since moved over to the checker.org side because we are forming our social impact, corporate social responsibility.org and foundation work as we scale and grow so that we can give back to the communities that we serve. So when I started, there were about 500 people in San Francisco and a landing team of 19 people in Denver. And we had to scale culturally in terms of our CRGs and development and everything to make sure that it didn't feel so San Francisco heavy. Today, we are now a 9-year-old company, and we have 1,300 employees that are globally dispersed, San Francisco, Denver, Orlando, Florida, Canada, and Santiago, Chile. And we have switched to a remote first, globally diverse or dispersed environment. But we do have hybrid connection, and we bring people together all over the globe to make sure that we can foster in-person connection, collaboration, and learning and development initiatives. So that's just a little bit about me. Checker, if you guys don't know, please check out Checker or checker.org. We are an HR tech company that believes that work is a source of human dignity, and we believe in the power of work and living wage employment. And we're committed to our mission of building a fairer future by designing technology to create opportunities for all. So that's a little bit about me. And I'll hand it back to Liza, probably to explain about herself too.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for joining our Coffee with Gable. I'm Liza Mash Levin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Gable. I'm based here in San Francisco. Gable is a hybrid workforce management solution. We enable employees to work from anywhere and book a space, whether this is a hot desk, meeting room, private office, or even a seat in their own company HQ, basically providing them with one platform to book any space anytime. And for people and workplace leader to have full visibility and control over their distributed workforce. A little bit about myself. I'm a mom of 2 little girls. I was in the 2 under 2 club. And now basically I work remotely or use some of our co-working spaces here in San Francisco. Our team is distributed globally. We're a small but mighty team, but we already have employees in around 7 states. So it's quite amazing to use your own product to help with collaboration and engagement. And that's it. Excited to be here.
So great to have all of you. So let's dive into the first topic, which is scaling opportunities for connection. Now I want to open this topic with some data. We all love data. So here you can see results from a very recent JLL Workforce Preferences Barometer that basically shows employees' priorities at work. So of course, we have quality of life and work-life balance and health and well-being leading the club, followed by a comfortable salary and finding a sense of purpose in work. And that's all understandable, right? It's like inwards facing. It's what we want for ourselves individually. But connecting with teammates is, first of all, made it to the top 5 list. And it's the only outward facing priority on this list. And it seems to matter to employees even more than career growth, which is very interesting. And I would follow this data with findings from our own report, a new report which we just published, which touches on how companies use flex workspaces, is the reasons why employees book these spaces. And an overwhelming majority of like 53% of employees say they go to these spaces to connect with their teams. So of course we have other reasons as well, like changing scenery, which are more prevalent where people are headed to these spaces alone. But when we see groups coming in, they're almost always looking to get together with their team and socialize. So if we have these insights in mind, I want to pick your brains on two questions, basically. So the first one is, how can companies build a culture where people want in-person connections instead of feeling forced to come into an office? And the second is, how can they scale these opportunities, whether they are fully remote or hybrid, or have globally dispersed employees? So I'm going to play bingo here, and I'm going to give the first word to Vanessa.
Sure. No, I think building a culture where people want to come in and connect, as opposed to feeling forced to come in, just has to do with flexibility in the approach, that you honor and trust your employees that they're going to be productive and engaged in whatever environment works best for them. And what you really need to do is offer flexibility in that. And so making sure that people feel like they can come in when they want to come in, when their teammates are there, when they can collaborate, when there's some sort of training or learning and development, taking care and providing intentionality around when you're coming in, and transparency about who's coming in, when and where and how, I think is super important. And I think that then, really it's the people are the new workplace amenity. The food is great, the snacks are great, the kombucha on tap is awesome, but we really want to see people when we come to work and get out in a hybrid environment, like you said, and like the data shows. And we need to be intentional about fostering those connections and allowing the flexibility so people have agency to show up and be engaged.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we've been finding, I mentioned we are based out of Washington, D.C. We do still have our office here, and we do about once a month have an in-office day where folks around the area can come in. But what we've noticed, and we are not Gable users yet, but we do have WeWork memberships across the United States. And so we've noticed that the days when we do DC in-office days, we have a lot of folks in different cities that will convene at a WeWork. We have a very active group in Chicago, for example, where actually outside of this, they go into the WeWork often to work together. And so I think finding different ways to encourage people and normalize that is exciting. I think one other thing we've thought about a lot is, a lot of times people think about in-person or connection being centered around something like a happy hour or some sort of an event. And while it is super important to be able to build that psychological safety and do team building and have people get to know each other on a personal level, that's also not the most comfortable environment for every person. That's not, what every introvert wants, is to come in and be flooded with a number of different people. And so to Vanessa's point around being super intentional and understanding what's the outcome we're trying to achieve here is super important as well.
I totally agree. I think the common thread would be intentionality. This is also what we see so much all across the board with the companies that we partner with, is some intentional initiatives, whether those are mutual co-working days, having regional champions in specific locations that bring the people together, coordination, and really making sure that, like, basically what's the goal for us to meet. And I think Vanessa made a really great point of, like, food is great, all of those things are great when you come to the office, but at the end of the day, this is not the reason why you come. The reason why you come is because you want to see other people, you want to see your teammates, you want to collaborate, you want to feel part of the organization. And I think the intentionality in how to do this is a key for a successful organization.
And when it comes to I think another essential aspect here is, if you have, and I think we are all here pretty distributed, it's essential to actually make sure that the opportunities that arise in one location, if you have a team in Denver that regularly organizes offsites or events or happy hours or whatnot, that you can at least enable teams in other locations to do the same, if not, encourage. Because that scaling is now, it's no longer about, hey, second floor versus the sixth floor. It's global. And I think that scalability is probably one of the most essential elements, especially when we're talking about intention and about getting people together. So on that note of bringing people together, we have some stats as well here that can help us understand a little bit more about what employees are actually getting from coming together in a landscape that is basically flexible or hybrid. So the data shows that employees with flexible schedules are 1.4 times more engaged than their counterparts who don't have flexible schedules. 53% of employees want to work in a hybrid setting moving forward instead of fully remote. And employees want office-like experiences, but they want them to cater for different needs. So what this means basically is that employees want the spaces that they come together in to offer a wider range of accommodations for different activities. So we have Zoom calls, we need silence for that. We have brainstorming sessions, we have meetings. So all these things, if they are happening in a workspace, need to be fully accommodated, which is not something that a lot of offices previously were accommodating of. So what I see from this and what I take out of this is that bringing people together in person can help amplify the engagement, productivity, and overall well-being of employees. What I want to hear from each of you is what are the different ways companies can do that to achieve those results? And Liza, we can start with you here.
We see several things. One is again intentionality or specific programs that are put into place, whether those are specific days to come to an office or whatever configuration needed to collaborate together, whether this is team-based or just company-based. That's one. Two, we see quarterly offsites or things that bring a larger group of employees together with the goal of connecting them not only to each other, but again to the company mission, goals, and culture. That's the second thing that we see. And the third is, how do we make fun? How do we make those personal connections? So, for example, we have a lot of companies that use Slack for communication, for those communication on when to go, where, to help ease of use in that aspect as well. So we definitely see bringing as much as tools to help streamline are really crucial there. And lastly is visibility, right? So what are policies? What are benefits? What can we use when and where is also a really, really key aspect to what would be a strong way for employees to feel engaged, but also acknowledged in terms of what is beneficial for them and how the company caters for their needs.
And I think for us, so realistically, I mean, we have folks, like I said, all over the country. So it's not always feasible for us to be able to get together in person. I mean, we're trying to save costs right now. It's not the cheapest thing in the world. We did do an in-person company-wide retreat last summer, and we realized at that scale, it's not sustainable to have that every single year for that many folks. And so we're trying to find other opportunities as well to give people that feeling of being in person when it's not always feasible. A few things that some of our teams have tried is we have one team that everyone will join a hangout for one day a week for about an hour, and they just work together. And it kind of gives that vibe of you're sitting in the office, you're able to look over at someone, ask a question, and go back to your work. Or, that experience where if you need help on something and your manager can kind of come look over your shoulder and talk through it, you can actually do this in real time in that type of a setting. So that's one thing that we've explored. Another really great way, I think, to build connections and build community and get people excited about different things that might not necessarily be explicitly tied to their work are things like ERGs, where they are building community around certain, whether it's a certain identity or a certain activity or being a working parent, things like that. And so finding ways to connect groups of folks like that at work as well, where they can build those connections and connect on topics that might not be directly related to their work, also then enhances their ability to build that connection and feel comfortable if they're working on a project, reaching out to someone on a different team that they might not have otherwise been comfortable reaching out to because they'd never had that opportunity to meet. So things like that are really top of mind for us. I won't say we perfected it at all, and we are still experimenting a lot. And I think that's another big piece of a lot of this too, is being open to experimenting with things, understanding that not everything is going to work, and being comfortable with that. Being comfortable with the uncomfortable is something we hear a lot. And so that's something our team really takes to heart.
Sarah, I absolutely agree with you, especially on the CRGs. We know that diverse teams yield better results. And when you're psychologically safe and you have a culture and a sense of belonging and purpose at work, you're actually able to not only win together as a team, but lose together, innovate, and then move faster and produce better outcomes as well. So I completely agree with you on the need for CRGs. And one thing that we've also done at Checker is we've really scaled our volunteering and giving efforts as well, as we've understood that people actually also want a sense of community and belonging in the geo in which they are in, not only with their coworkers, but with their community at large. And so what we've done is create like impact ambassadors in different regions where we have all of our different teams that work with nonprofit partners, develop volunteering giving opportunities, and then we as a benefit give 20 hours of volunteer time off to get together with your team in your community and make a positive impact for living wage employment and access to education and employment services. And so that's been something that has really connected us. I think having a strong mission and having a strong purpose and really making sure that your business aligns with your values ensures that your team, no matter where they are, feel connected towards a common goal and feel that there's a huge sense of purpose at work. I know April was what we like to call Fair Chance Month because not everyone has had, it's usually globally called Second Chance Month, but we don't believe that people sometimes have a first chance to begin with. And I know that May was Mental Health Awareness Month as well. And so I think structuring things around where the CRGs can get involved and advocate and make sure that it's part of your business through and through is super important. There's a link that I'll drop in here too from the US Surgeon General on workplace well-being that I found really useful in just creating workplace programs and have then taken into the checker.org kind of side as well. But I'll kind of drop that into the chat if anyone's interested for that as well.
And just to add to what Vanessa said, I saw we had a question on the data sources for some of the data that we showed. So I wanted to let everyone who's joining us live know that we, apart from the link that Vanessa just dropped into the chat, we will have, we will send you, actually all of you, a little surprise bundle with all the data resources that I just spoke about and that we will speak about in this presentation. So including JLL's report, Gable's report that we just published, the resources that Vanessa shared. So you will all be getting, apart from this recording, you will get a very handy bundle to read. So stay tuned. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic, which is, I want to talk to you a little bit broadly about managing a distributed workforce and what that is like. So I want to start with the challenges, and I have some of them listed here. First of all, I have to say there is this tendency for, as we spoke about, global distribution of employees and companies. So we have a very global workplace, but we also at the same time have the tendency or the need from employees for the workplace to be personalized or individual and have it cater to different people's needs. Then we have the need to provide a level playing field for employees everywhere on all locations, and whether they are working, on site, fully remote or hybrid. And then of course we have the need to track data and insights, because if your team is distributed, if they're using different types of workspaces, you need to track all of this. So I want to hear from the three of you what you think about these challenges and what would be at least one to add to the list from each of you. So Sarah, do you wanna give it a go?
Yeah, sure. I'll take this one. So I think everything here is definitely a challenge that we've experienced. I think to that first point around being both a global workplace as well as everyone really desiring that personalized experience, that's this might be a controversial opinion, but I think that's something where you need to build programs that you feel like are going to support as many people as possible. But at the end of the day, the onus should not only be on the HR team or the company to ensure that every individual feels like they're getting that unique experience, there has to be a middle ground where folks are showing up as well. And that's something that we talk about a lot at our team. I think our culture is one where we like to give people a lot of autonomy, a lot of control over how they plan their day, how they plan their work. And so along with that also comes with the important piece of setting norms and making sure that people understand, okay, we have this set of cultural values that are guiding us. What do they actually mean? And how do we behave so that we are supporting the things that we value as an organization? And so when you're not in the office to pick up on this day to day, not explicitly defining those makes it very challenging, especially for new hires joining the company, to really understand what does that mean and what does that look like? Things like decision making, anything from process to, hey, how do we use our Slack channels? Are we allowed to post links in there? Are people joking around? Are there certain channels that are only for information? So really explicitly defining that is something that we've been working through because we feel like it's critical. And then the data piece as well also is huge. I think we have so much data available to us right now. There's so many tools that teams are using. And so really understanding what are the things that are most important, not just us as a people team, but how are we connecting those to the business goals and making sure that everything we're doing circles back to how we're enabling everyone to actually achieve those goals. And so I think for us, again, that's something that, you can have as much data as possible, but if it's not tracking, how are people actually able to do their job? How can we improve their experience that way? Some of that comes with connections. And that's another thing that we've learned we need to be super intentional about is how are we mentoring people? How are we providing them with opportunities to get exposure to our leadership team? I mentioned earlier that, we've done WeWork days in different cities and states across the United States. We had a board meeting in Austin, Texas one time and invited everyone in the Texas area to come and join and listen to the board meeting and interact with them that way. We've had some members of our exec team travel to different cities and really focused the day around that. So they have the opportunity to really interact with that exec and get some of that exposure that they might not otherwise get, because that is something that people are missing out on. And, there's so much research out there where folks can feel like they don't have the same opportunities to get ahead in their career or get exposure to new challenging projects because they don't have that exposure. And so really being super intentional is the word of the day, about how we're providing those opportunities and making sure that we're reinforcing that at all levels, from the C-suite down to the most junior employee.
I completely agree, Sarah. Tying everything back to the mission, vision, purpose, and the goals, and making sure that you have established OKRs and processes that are put into place, and so that everyone knows what they're doing in order to achieve those goals is super, super important and hard in a distributed workforce because you're not together all of the time in person. So yes, intentionality, I think, is definitely the word of the day. I also think that being intentional about setting that up structurally in terms of your meeting cadence, your annual cadence, when and where you get together, how teams connect, and then also really importantly, what we've noticed too, how you have cross-functional alignment, prioritization, and any dependencies, and making sure that those are really clearly articulated and that you are not just siloed in your own organization. If you're in workplace and you report to the CFO, that you're also still working with the people team and you're working with legal on COVID policies or whatever it may be, but you're not just siloed in one thing. Workplace is really about employee engagement now. And it's not facilities management any longer. And so it's been interesting to see the shift of what that means and the philosophy behind what you can do when you all work together to achieve a common goal. And so being really intentional in your cross-functional collaboration and meetings. And I think it's interesting too, because one really big challenge I find as well, once you're super global and dispersed, is that the time zone can be an interesting issue or management issue, because I can be managing a team in Denver, but I might have half my team in Santiago, Chile, or in Canada, or in whatever it is. And so making sure that you set the intentionality, to your point, Sarah, around the norms and the mores of how the business works in terms of whether or not you do it all on Slack. And when you're asleep, you have your little sleep icon. And when you're working, you have your work icon. And when you're commuting, you have your bus icon, or whatever it may be. And then making sure that, technology is moving so rapidly as well. And we're in an era where we really are able to be a hybrid office culture and still stay connected. So utilizing technology to like enhance those connections, I think, is super important. And then also when you do events or gatherings or different things as well, making sure, at least this is what we've been trying to do. And, we were all a little imperfect in our learning and growing and trying to be flexible in all of this. But I do think that, when we have like an annual offsite, we try to do that just fully remote so that everyone is on a level playing field and that everyone's dialing in, even if they're in the office, et cetera, so that we can be together for the anniversary toast, so that we can do trivia together, so we can have a Coachella performance and all of the different people at Checker who are incredible musicians can get on the virtual concert, and you can do all of these different things. And then you can have centralized gatherings. And so you can have big parties in your hub locations. You can have small dinners in your locations where you have 10 or more people. You can do a remote, dinner, et cetera, as well, and offer meal credits and whatnot too, so that experience is both global and personalized, and that it is a level playing field in terms of connection with C staff, E staff, et cetera. And then lastly, on point number 3 is really like tracking your data and insights. Feedback and data is super important and more important now than ever. And so you just need to make sure that you're embedding that all of the time. So you're like, great, like we put this whole hybrid event together. How did you like it? What went well? What didn't go well? What can we do better next time? So that you have that data, and then you can innovate based on your employees' responses, and that they're also engaged. You can't build something, just all by yourself in a silo. I think is really the name of the game. Collaboration and integration throughout is important, and that data and feedback really helps to build better cultural moments in the future.
I love it. I will be brief because so many amazing things were said here. One, of course, intentionality is the name of the game, and I have to echo that as well. I do want to say for time zone, this is so true. I mentioned we are so dispersed. We have our engineering team in Israel, like it's a 10-hour difference. This is a lot, and I think in general, like how are we intentional in terms of guidelines? When can we, send messages? Even that, like we had our team offsite, and some of the things that were brought there is like, how do we communicate? Like, what are the boundaries? The different cultures, different norms. This is actually something that I was, surprised of. Okay, this has to be intentional in saying this is how we work. This is the work policies that we have. This is what our global team needs. This is how we want to interact with each other. I think this is crucial. I didn't even think that this is such an important thing until we've seen that this is actually part of what the team needs. I think that also because, like to Sarah's point, it's important to do things also remotely and understand how we can collaborate at scale or bring those connections at scale. So, for example, and bringing that in structure, I think is also crucial. So we do like bi-weekly team bonding events with the entire company. We also started doing quarterly events just for specific business units or things like that to bring people together. We just recently did like a waffle making class that we shipped everyone like waffles. It's anecdotal, but it was such an amazing thing, really. And you do feel connected, even though we were all in different time zones, and Andrea can attest. It's quite amazing in that sense. And lastly, I think to Vanessa's point on having those feedback loops, and Sarah, like you mentioned, a lot of data in place. And it's so true. Like data's we have in abundance, but how do we act upon it is really crucial. So even have really clear, goals for each event or policy, and understand and iterate if the outcome based on the feedback aligns with the goals that we set up to the get-go are really crucial there. Yes.
I just
Sorry,
want to add a
one quick
little
thing.
point.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say one thing that we've had to be super open about too with our team is like, we're going to be experimenting with stuff, but at the end of the day, if something's not working, we don't know that if you don't tell us. And so really trying to also normalize, like, we need your feedback, but then also acting on it, or if you cannot act on it, explaining why you're not going to too, so people don't stop giving you feedback. But that's something too we've really had to like continuously tell our team, if it's not working, we need to know. We can't read your mind. And so this is important for us to over communicate.
Yeah, you read my mind. I was going to say that we see this over and over again, which is the importance of actually being okay with things not working, because we're all learning as we go. But I do have a recommendation for the waffle class if you're all into that. I have to say a huge plus. It sounds small, but you know, you're sitting in your kitchen and you're eating your waffles with your team, and they're having them for breakfast, or you're having them for dinner, but it's happening at the same time, and it's absolutely beautiful. So yeah, I had to jump in with that one. Okay, so now we've discussed a little bit about the challenges. So now I want to hear about the opportunities, and this is where I want all three of you to give me your most optimistic predictions or ways that, you know, flexibility combined with bringing people together, what it can do for employees, what it can do for people teams and workplace teams, and what it can do for organizations across the globe. So Liza, do you want to kick it off here?
Yeah, I can start. I think that at least the way I see it, we are building the future. Every company should be, you know, with flexibility and the benefits of their people at first, like top of mind, I would say. With that, you can hire the best talent. You can enable best employees and meet them where they are. I think basically our company is given that. I couldn't have done what I'm doing without this future or presence of work. And I think that's why I'm extremely optimistic about it. Is one, having and we talked about this, the diversity of teams, multiple opinions, multiple ideas, and how it comes into every aspect of the company, whether this is, you know, the vision, the go-to-market, the engineering, all of it, I would say comes from creating a flexible, diverse workforce. So I definitely think we are now building how every company should be set up moving forward.
Vanessa, do you want to go next?
Well, I think Liza said it so well. I mean, I think this is the future of work, and the future of work is flexible, and the future of work is diverse, and access to being able to do your work anywhere at any time, and making sure that you bring intentionality into your practice about what drives engagement, productivity, and success for your teams is of utmost importance. But I think the opportunity is limitless. I think if you just, you know, get on board with trying to figure out where there might be gaps, if it's in the learning and development space, if it's in the proximity to leadership, and then building intentional strategies around that, will make sure that that organizational success yields. You need all three of these in unison in order for it to be successful, which is why this slide is so beautiful. But you really do need it all. You need to embrace the flexibility and create that opportunity. You also need to train managers on what that means, and you need to clearly define and reiterate and over communicate what that means for your company and how you're going to do that, and be intentional about that. And then for future-proofing your workplace strategy, I think I at least can say on the Checker side, pre-pandemic, we were all in the office. We have so much commercial real estate right now, and it is vastly underutilized. So right-sizing your real estate footprint, embracing the flexibility, and trying to figure out how you're actually going to scale that now. I think in the beginning, we all thought, oh, we're going to call everyone back after 1 year. And then it was 2 years, and then you hired everywhere. And to Liza's point, That's actually really good. It accelerated, I think, where we kind of needed to go anyway, and where we were going to be. And the future's here, and it's now, and we're building it together. So it's an exciting time to be a part of workplace strategy, and it's an exciting time to build human-centered offices where people want to come to work and they feel at home and safe and innovative, and that they can do their best work, and also not feel like they can't have work-life balance, or they're always commuting, or they can never pick up their sick child, or whatever it may be. And so I think that we're building a fairer future of work, a more diverse and inclusive future of work, by offering a flexible one and retaining the best employees while doing so.
Yeah, wow, you all said that so well. I think the only other thing that I'll just continue to reinforce here is I think the opportunity to build that psychological safety on teams is huge in this type of environment. It really requires a ton of trust for someone to be able to trust that their team can operate and, have that autonomy to prioritize what they need to do. But that also does put a lot of onus on the manager to be able to help reset expectations when things aren't actually going the way they should be, or they aren't aligned. And so having that psychologically safe environment and that trust built between your managers and the folks that report to them, and ideally across teams, is huge. And so there's a ton of opportunities, I think, in this future of work environment to find new ways to build that trust and that psychological safety. And I think that that's going to be a key thing for all organizations to continue to evolve and figure out, to ensure that the future of work is successful.
Agreed with all points, 100%. So I want to touch very briefly, and this will be the last thing before our Q&A session, is on measuring success and how you can basically do it from different angles. So what we see most often when we talk with companies and with people leaders, workplace leaders, ops leaders, is these three pillars. So measuring success from an aspect of culture, cost, and visibility. Culture, of course, you're trying to see what's the impact of the new workplace on your culture. Are employees happier? Are they more engaged? The cost aspect, of course, is optimizing spending, cutting those unnecessary costs, and reinvesting what you saved into your people. And visibility goes back into the data and insights aspect that we spoke about. Are these the key pillars for you too, or would you add anything to this mashup? Sarah, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think these are definitely the top three. I would say included in the culture umbrella, I think one of the ways that you can track is this is being successful is recognition, and mostly from peer-to-peer recognition. Of course, super important for teams to recognize individual contributors on their teams. But if you're able to have folks that are, whether you're, let's say, 15-5 user and sending high fives to peers, or we do a semi-annual recognition program where folks can submit anyone for any reason that's related to our core values. I think when you see a lot of engagement with programs like that and show that people are nominating peers that you might not have had any idea that they were interacting with, I think that's another way to really measure, are we building an environment where people feel like they're connected and they have that engagement? And that's huge for us and something we're excited to continue to evolve. It's taken us a while to get here, and I think there's a lot of areas for opportunity for us to continue to grow, but something that is really top of mind for us.
Liza, do you want to go next?
I think in terms of I would touch probably on the culture side. I think in terms of cost, we use our own products, so we think that we definitely optimized for cost there. But in terms of culture, I definitely agree with Sarah. This is such a strong point on recognition. That we need to have this also as in a structured way. I would say this is, we see this spontaneously within our team, but I think in general we talked about like equality, like put people in the front, and their work is really crucial, and highlighting that is really key. The second aspect I would say is actually everything related to onboarding and putting this as part of culture. And I see Sarah's nodding, but this is a really big thing, is how do you meet people when they are remote, when they're distributed? How can you help them feel welcomed as quickly as possible, feel connected? What are the small and large things that you can do beside the making sure that they have their work environment set up, they have all access to tools and so on, which is as we all know, it's a challenge of itself when you are remote. But I think that the biggest thing is being intentional throughout all the process, right? Whether this is when you are a new employee or employee that has been with the company for some time. I think it's really crucial to keep this in part, and you can definitely measure the success of onboarding employees and how do they feel when they first come to the company.
I think that's brilliant. I do think that onboarding in this environment is so unique because the interview process and the onboarding process has shifted most drastically, I would say, for dispersed teams. And so it is a unique challenge. And what are you going to do to make sure that you have that sense of like your first day, everything shows up at your house and you have the swag and you have your computer and the IT team knows how to set you up right away. And you know about the culture and you know about the vision and the mission and how you can get engaged on your first day. And so I think that that's a huge win if you can figure out the onboarding in the hybrid environment or in the remote environment, so that when people are showing up and excited to get to work, they know like where they can plug in, how they can plug in, and also like where they can find all the information. Because you used to be able to just like kind of be able to swing your chair around and say like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm new. Like I have a quick question about this. Do you know where I could find this information or who I could go to? And now you can do that through Slack and technology and everything else, but it takes a little bit more of like, who am I going to reach out to? Who should I go to? Is this a silly question? And so using technology to create those systems and environments where if you use Confluence or if you use Guru or whatever you use in order to go to and point to like, here's where all the information is, so that you can self-serve and you can look for where that information is prior to having to go ask like a bunch of people a lot of questions, I think is helpful. And then I do think that the kudos is huge, Sarah, to your point. I mean, giving kudos, it should just be embedded into every team meeting, and they should start with the team meeting. You should know like why you're there, what your social contract is. You should hold each other accountable to it, and you should celebrate your wins, because you don't do that enough sometimes in a hybrid or remote environment. You're always there to like achieve and make the OKRs and get through the next goal and do everything that you need to do. But like, really, you should be celebrating all of the work that has been done as you go as well. So we use Bonusly, which is a Slack integration, and you can send kudos, et cetera, through there. But we've also embedded it into all of our team meetings, starting at the C-suite and going down, and then like also creating just the Slack channel of our own called Cheers for Checkers, where anyone can like every month just say cheers to this team for doing this, or thank you, Mary, for helping me on that, and like, Paul, I didn't even know who you were before we started working on this project, and you're an incredible human being, thanks for the personal connection, or whatever it is. And then we like spin a little remote virtual wheel enabled by that technology, and someone gets like a prize at the end of the month for whoever had submitted on their behalf. And so I think that's really important too. I do think the point that you said, Andrea, about the cost and like actually reducing the cost, but then not just getting rid of that cost necessarily, reinvesting it in your people and telling your people that they are an important asset and like the most important asset of the company, and that you're going to enable them to be able to connect, and you're going to reinvest that money in there, whether it be remote connections like the waffle making class or in-person gatherings or whatnot, but making sure that when you do reduce cost, you do reinvest that cost in learning and development and connection, et cetera, in your community. And then the visibility of the data is super important. I mean, you need to have systems in place, whether it be Envoy or badge tracking data or Gable's data that will show you who's where, when, and when people are coming into the office, and using that technology to drive the visibility and the data gathering is super important in order for you to iterate and make sure that you're right sizing your real estate, and then also like enhancing your culture and doing it for that personalized and global environment.
One thing too, to your point about, recognizing wins in meetings, I think another big piece too that's very intimidating is recognizing and almost celebrating failures in a way that starts to build that safety too. I think that's also something super hard to see when everyone's distributed. Is failure is normal. Unfortunately, it's a part of life, and it is how a lot of people really learn a lot. And so how are you able to really talk about not even just failures, but things that didn't go the way that we thought they should? And so how are you normalizing that? And I think making sure that your managers are trained and feeling comfortable and being the first person to step up and talk about that, so that their team starts to feel like they're able to take that accountability as well. I think that's a huge measure of, does someone actually feel like they have a psychologically safe environment, like they have connections to these individuals where they feel like they can talk about this in a way that they know it's not a judgmental space. They're learning more from their peers. And so just wanted to throw that out there because you reminded me of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Sarah. I agree 100% on that, for sure.
100%. Okay, wow, what a discussion. Okay, so before we dive to what's probably going to be the shortest Q&A session, I want just to give a little bit of background about Gable to everyone, especially those who are joining us for the first time. So if you're wondering what Gable does, we are the platform for workplace and people teams that enable you to help your employees connect in person, to stay on top of data and insights, save on real estate costs, and get a holistic view into your workplace strategy. If it sounds easy, it's because it is if you use Gable. So if you want to know more about how we can help you tailor the perfect workplace strategy, I'll just launch a quick poll right now. And if you want to learn more, just simply click yes, and we'll be in touch. Now, I don't know if we had any Q&A module questions, but I did have one question that was submitted to me via LinkedIn from one of our audience members. I don't know if they're here with us now or not, but the question is, what incentives can I implement to make in-person gatherings more appealing to my remote employees? So anyone want to go first?
I'll go first because I'm already off mute. I think it's really difficult because you want people to feel like they're excited to come in. And so I think really just emphasizing, what's the purpose behind this? What is someone going to get out of it? Again, like we have so many things that have been normalized around, like happy hours. Not everyone drinks, a large lunch where not everyone's comfortable in a large group. And so what are the small things that you feel like each individual can get out of these opportunities, and really reinforcing those and advertising that in a way that feels like it's comfortable for all, as well as giving people that opportunity to feel comfortable to opt out. I think too, when people have that feeling where like, I can make this choice, sometimes they're also a little bit more excited to actually lean in and do the thing that they might not have felt like they really wanted to do if it wasn't really a choice. And so really just being very straightforward in purpose, and giving folks the opportunity to feel like they can make that decision for themselves. Oftentimes I've seen, at least, people will make the decision they want to be able to come and have person and have those connections.
Yeah, I agree. I think having the agency and the flexibility to choose, like you're saying, Sarah, is like very, very important. And also the purpose behind like why you're coming in, even if it is a happy hour, then great, that's the purpose. But are we coming in to work on a project that we like celebrated, or that we like owned up to, like, this was a failure, now we need to do a postmortem, and it's kind of easier to do a postmortem in person to try to figure out like how we're going to innovate or solve for this, et cetera, and just making sure that those are intentional and not always, like you said, in large groups. Like sometimes it can just be a one-on-one meeting, or it can just be with your own team, or it can be with the cross-functional partner, or it can be like these other like gatherings, et cetera. I do think like learning and development is a huge thing that brings people in kind of as well. We give a $3,000 per year budget for employees to learn and develop and grow in their careers. And so we've seen some people, like in our Santiago office, everyone decided to take an English class together and have a professor come in, and they all met on Wednesday evenings and got together. And then they could also take the class together and then connect after if they so chose. So I think having those purposeful connections and moments that aren't just always about the happy hour is very important. And if that means that like you get to have a horticulturist come in and give you a little plant that then you can make with your teammates and then you can take back to your desk and you can see the growth of something that you used to have in the office all of the time, but bring the natural world into your home space is also I think kind of fun and important, similarly to the remote waffle making. So just making it intentional, I think, is always a good idea.
Oh my God, Vanessa, I would definitely take it this idea and implemented this. That's great. I think lastly is, and Tracy also wrote this in the chat. The chat is basically choice, right? Is we do see, for example, a lot of companies that we partner with implement regional champions. They have someone who is rallying the team together to either co-working day or some project, again with intentional, with some specific topic in mind, and people can opt in. They it's not mandatory by any means, but the fact that they have visibility on, this is happening on this and this date and this and this location is really crucial, I would say. But having someone that will rally the local teams or in a specific purpose, I think is really a great way to help engagement in that sense as well.
Okay, I think that concludes our incredible, amazing, insightful discussion. First of all, thank you to all three of you. Thanks to everyone who joined, who wrote in the chat, who asked questions. Thank you for being with us here. Of course, expect your now not so surprising bundles of resources. And as always, we hope to see you next time on the next Coffee with Gable. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for
Bye.
having, and yeah, always connect on LinkedIn.